friends, Heidi here from Rain Country Homestead. God is good all the time. And today I'm going to be using some of the leftover chicken that I roasted on the wood stove yesterday. And if you didn't see that video, you can look for it in the cards up at the corner there. I believe that's right there. So I'm going to be making a chicken pot pie, which I've made a lot from scratch. I make beef pot pie, chicken pot pie, and for the filling, that's all going to be pretty much the same as I always do. So I'm going to show you what I do for that. However, instead of doing a pie crust this time, I'm going to be using a biscuit top. I got this idea from my oldest son's girlfriend, Kayla, and I just thought it sounded really yummy and just kind of a nice twist. Since I do like to make beef pot pie a lot too, I thought, well, maybe this is a great way I can make a different type of pot pie with the chicken, so it makes it even more different. So I'm going to try to do this as quick as possible because I know some people are like, well, measurements would be nice, but when I do stuff like this, people, I really don't measure. I go by sight, so I apologize I can't give you exact measurements. That's why I'm demonstrating. I used to get the same thing on Facebook and people would want recipes and I'd be like, well, you're not going to get it. You have to at least see how I do it. So try to follow me the best you can. So, and you know, you just got to sort of play with it. But I guess part of the reason I do it this way too is to show you that it can be done without having to have exact measurements. Now today, since I'm running low on the regular store-bought milk, I'm going to be using the Gosner milk. This is this can be stored on a shelf. So, and it has at least a year-long shelf life, but I'm going to say at least 3. So it's not as healthy as the organic milk I buy at the store or your raw milk. However, it is a good shelf storage item. So I'm just going to pour a bunch of it in there, and then I'll show you. I may have to add more later. That's why another reason I can't give exact measurements. Okay, and then I'm also going to be using some organic half and half to give it a little bit more thickness. I knew that one was about empty, so I opened another one. Okay, so you can kind of see that there, right? Typically your pot pie mixture is going to have some kind of milk base. Now for the flour, this is to thicken it. I would say that's probably close to 1/4 cup. That's about what you want, 1/4 to 1/3 cup. I'm using fresh ground whole white wheat flour that I soaked the grains to. So technically what people would do for something like this is do it more like a roux first, or even thicken this separately. However, because I cook this slowly on the wood stove, my method is a bit different. So I'll be putting in some vegetables and I'll just speed that process up, but I want to show you some of the spices that I'm going to be using in this particular batch. Just like everything I make, I always do a little different twist on the spice. This is golden oregano. It has a little bit different aroma and flavor and a much more mild flavor than your regular oregano. This is lavender leaves from my garden. Lavender is just a real nice herb to season with. Somewhat of a rosemary flavor, but a little bit different. Maybe I would say a little bit sweeter than rosemary. And sage, I love sage. I use a lot of sage in my cooking. Again, that's also from my garden. So all this stuff here came from the garden. The basil came from the garden. Gotta have basil. And then the dried ingredients too also will help thicken up your sauce. A little bit of salt, and this is the Himalayan salt, but I will give you a link to my favorite salt, which is the Redmond real salt that's mined in Utah. I'm going to use garlic powder, or granulated garlic. I'm trying to pour that in such a way that you can see. I'm going to use some dehydrated jalapenos, a few of them in there. The funny thing I found about dehydrated jalapenos, they seem to end up making food, when you cook with it, spicier than using the fresh jalapenos. And I obviously just opened this can of home-grown tomatoes that I dehydrated last year. Love those dehydrated tomatoes. Okay, so at least you can kind of see what I'm doing there. I'll speed up the rest of this process. Even though I use granulated garlic, I'm also going to throw in some of my fermented garlic. And in that I up there, the letter I in the cards, you'll be able to find how to do your own fermented garlic. So look for that. It's just a really great way to preserve garlic, and it makes it even that much more healthy. Always my red pepper, that has to go in there. Okay, so from here on out, I'll just speed up the rest. But I'm going to go ahead and go put this on the wood stove and let it cook for a bit to thicken up the sauce and start softening the vegetables. So I've got 2 cups of home ground whole white wheat flour right here, and I haven't added anything to it yet. And here I've got some milk. I put about over a half cup of milk and added enough homemade vinegar to it to clabber it, make it thicker. And I always put vinegar in my breads because it just makes them healthier all the way around and preserves them for longer. And so I've got about 3/4 cup liquid right there. Now I'm going to add salt. That's going to be about a teaspoon. And for me, in my little hands, a teaspoon looks about like that. So, and then I always have this little thing that I keep in here, which is a half a tablespoon. And so I'm going to need 2 of these because when it comes to baking powder, anytime you have a quick bread, if you've got 2 cups of flour, you're going to need roughly at least a tablespoon of baking powder. Okay, and then I'm going to add some fat to that. In this case, this I can't give you measurements because this I definitely go by feel, and I know by the looks of the texture what it's supposed to look like. So I'm gonna cut this in, and I'll just speed it up from here. Okay, so you can see I'm using my fingers. This is part of the way I can tell whether or not I've got enough fat in here, and this is just perfect. I can tell by the way it clumps. If you've seen any of my other videos on making stuff like this, you'll see that that's the method I use, and it works really good. Now I'm going to go ahead and pour in the vinegar milk, which is also another way just to make buttermilk. I never buy buttermilk because I always just do that instead. And I may end up adding more liquid because what I'm looking for here is just a stickier kind of, no, actually this might be good. I'm wanting a stickier biscuit because I'm just going to drop it on top. So my sauce is pretty much done. It's a little bit runnier than I want, but I'm going to see what happens after I add the chicken to it. So I'm going to go ahead and put this mixture into my baking pan. And I'm not going to bake this on the wood stove because I want the biscuits to get brown on top. So I'll be baking it in my toaster oven instead. So how I'm doing this, and keep in mind I've never actually made this particular thing before, so I'm just kind of based off what she told me, I'm just sort of making it up as I go, and we'll find out how it turns out. Typically baked biscuits take about 20 to 30 minutes, so I'm going to try that first and we'll see what it looks like at about 400 degrees. Sounds good to me. So we'll just see how it turns out. So I just pulled this out of the toaster oven, and it was 25 minutes at 400 degrees. You can see how nice and brown the biscuit topping looks. Okay, and my monstrous of gloves. At least these are new ones. They fit a little snugger because they're not all stretched out. Now I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit out. It's actually way too early for dinner. Mr. Rain isn't even home yet. But since I'm making this video, I wanted to at least show what it looks like there. And then I'm going to take a test taste. So you can see that. So I gave it a try. It's really, really good. The biscuits kind of soak up some of the liquid underneath, and it just makes it all that much better. So I highly recommend giving it a try, and I hope my instructions were at least somewhat easy to follow, despite the fact that I don't use real measurements. And if nothing else, it'll give you something to start with and work off of. So thanks for watching. Take care. God bless.